Once upon a time, in a small village, there lived a young man who was curious about the teachings of the Buddha. He had heard about the Buddha's wisdom and compassion and was eager to learn more. One day, he decided to visit the Buddha to ask him to explain his teachings in simple terms. When the young man arrived at the Buddha's place, he respectfully asked him to explain his teachings in a simple way so that he could understand. The Buddha looked at him with a gentle smile and asked him a question, "Do you have a son?" The young man nodded his head and said, "Yes, I do." The Buddha then asked, "Does your brother have a son?" The young man replied, "Yes, he does." The Buddha continued, "Do your neighbors have a son?" The young man replied, "Yes, they do." "Very well," said the Buddha. "Tell me, if your son were to die, how sad would you be?" The young man replied with a heavy heart, "I would feel incredibly sad. I would not be able to bear that news. I would feel that my entire world had collapsed. I cannot imagine whether I could make it through." The Buddha then asked, "If your brother's son dies, how sad will you feel?" The young man replied, "Sir, I would feel devastated, but not to the extent if my own son dies." The Buddha continued, "If your neighbor's son dies, how sad will you feel?" The young man replied, "Lord, I would feel some sadness, but not to the extent if my brother's son dies." The Buddha then asked, "If the son of a person not known to you personally dies, how sad will you feel?" The young man thought for a moment and replied, "I would not feel any sadness." The Buddha smiled and said, "Then you understand that the extent of the sadness is relative to what you hold as me or mine." The young man was confused, so the Buddha decided to explain it to him using an example. "When you took your son to the beach, did he not play with sandcastles?" The young man replied, "Yes, he did." "When the ocean waves broke the sandcastles, did your son cry?" asked the Buddha. "Yes, he did," replied the young man. "Did you cry too?" asked the Buddha. "I did not," replied the young man. The Buddha then asked, "Why did you not cry?" The young man replied, "Sir, the child cries because he thinks the castle is pretty and permanent. Hence, he is attached to it. I knew the sandcastle is not permanent, so I did not cry when the waves broke it down." The Buddha then explained that nothing in this world is permanent, and if we attach ourselves to something or someone, we will suffer when we inevitably lose them. He used the example of the sandcastle to show that attachment only leads to suffering. The Buddha taught about non-attachment because it is the only true way to avoid suffering. He explained that everything else would be an illusion, and what we make out of our illusion is merely up to us. The way we see our lives and the world around us is up to us, and the only way to find true happiness is to let go of our attachments and embrace non-attachment. The young man left the Buddha feeling enlightened and grateful for the teachings he had received. He went back to his village and started to practice non-attachment, which brought him immense peace and happiness. He shared the Buddha's teachings with others, and soon many people in the village started to embrace non-attachment and live a happier and more fulfilling life. This is Wonderful Words of Life Motivation. Thanks for watching.